I can do things at WED without asking anybody, even my wife.
Coney Island, world's biggest barrel of fun.
And anywhere else your imagination takes you.
Okay, we've done that. Now what?
To get the whole show now, you hurry.
Anything's possible at Disneyland.
Welcome aboard the Themed Attraction Podcast, where we take you for a ride through the wonderful world of theme park design, that is. You've just set sail on a voyage to discover the who, what, why, and how they did it via in-depth discussions with theme park industry masters of the craft. I'm your skipper, Freddie Martin, and with me as always is theme park master planner, designer, and spatial storyteller from Storyland Studios, Mel McGowan. Which way are we headed today, Mel?
Freddie, today's journey is very special. We're going to take a journey to a project near and dear to both of our hearts to explore the world of experiential learning and education with Alissa Whiteley, who's the director of Poverty Encounter, a new walkthrough immersive experience in LA. She's an educator at heart. She's passionate about helping students understand the world they live in and how they can make it a better place. She was part of the team that developed the Air Force One Discovery Center, which actually won a Themed Entertainment Association TEA Award in 2009. And now, on top of all that, she leads Poverty Encounter, which represents a completely revolutionary new take on themed environments. One that doesn't just virtually take you to the four corners of the world, but actually drop kicks you out the exit and allows you to then be part of changing that world.
Yeah, that's right. This is a very personal episode for both of us, so it's going to be a journey to remember. All right, folks, keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the boat, because this episode is about to leave the dock. Hit it, Sam. Wow, Mel, here we are. We're talking about a project that really started our relationship. It was right from the beginning of our relationship. The beginning of this thing called Poverty Encounter.
The genesis story of themed attraction.
It really is.
Yeah.
This is how we met. Is working on this project together. I'm excited.
Likewise, yeah, it's been a long story coming, and can't wait to finally get it out.
Yeah, I want to say it's like 2010, 2011 that we met because the company that I was working for, Children's Hunger Fund, wanted to create an immersive experience around their mission, which was to serve hungry children in different places around the world. And the idea of sitting people down in front of a documentary video about hunger, well, that really does move people. Or you show them great photos from the field, and that moves people to want to give and want to serve. But it always seems to be just arm's length. You know, I would travel with the president of the company, Dave Phillips. We would travel to these places around the world and take a lot of pictures and come back and try and tell that story. But it so
frustrating.
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
You can't really tell that story. And then there were opportunities where we'd take certain key donors on trips, and a dozen people at a time, and they would see firsthand the impact in those places of just the simple gift of food. And they would come back enthused, excited, ready to hit the ground running and stop the horrible things that is going through the lives of these kids. And so we started brainstorming, and Dave really wanted to make it into something that people could walk into. That's a big job. And anybody who's in the themed entertainment knows, hey, if you want to create something that you got to walk into, it's a big job. And so we enlisted the help of a whole bunch of people along the way. We had some Imagineers from WDI came in and helped us out. Just a dream experience for me as an old Disney fan. And then from there, it wasn't enough for just to have my sketches on paper, or had a buddy build a sculpture of what it would look like. A little model with a scale person standing in the front of it. Like that wasn't enough. Yeah. It's fantastic, beautiful little model built of what we wanted it to look like. No, we needed to go to the next level, and that's how we met. You and I, we engaged Storyland Studios to help us create the next level, start talking about real drawings. What would throughput look like? What would the number of beams and what size space would we need? What footprint would we need to have for this thing? And then start drawing elevations and start really thinking through the story. And that's how we met. And it's been fantastic ever since, although it took quite a long time to make this thing happen.
Well, along the way, we really got to work with some just great friends and partners. Robin Hall, again, a theme park legend, veteran designer, former Knott's Berry Farm director of design, and Bruce Green, who's a buddy over at Thinkwell, and our entire team of artists. And again, definitely a special project, and I can't believe we're here at this point talking about this real live thing that any of our listeners can step into any day they want.
Yeah, and we got an opportunity to see it. You know, we got through the drawing stage, we drew the elevations, and then it was up to construction to begin. And so there was a couple years there where we didn't see anything of it.
You got to pay for this.
Yeah, somebody's got to pay. So they did the fundraising with, we didn't see any of this. They did the fundraising. They got the city to sign off on it. They did. They had the backing to be able to do it, and then brought in other companies to construct it. It was fantastic. And just the other day, you and I got an opportunity to walk through it, and wow, what a privilege. And what it looks like, and we'll get into this a little bit in the podcast, but essentially you really do get this opportunity to walk into a garbage dump in Guatemala and see the way kids and families living on subsistence living, just digging through the garbage dump to find something they could sell to buy food. I mean, what an impactful thing to walk through and to see. You get to go into Haiti, Port-au-Prince, Haiti, right after the earthquake, and it's real. I mean, it looks as real as it can possibly look. You get to go to the brickyards in Nepal, where families are lifelong indentured servants, building and making bricks. Kids start as young as 6 years old carrying bricks for these companies. And it's a horrible, horrible thing to see and understand. And Children's Hunger Fund, Poverty Encounter did their best to represent that in a real way. And here's the thing, Mel. I went to Haiti 10 days after that earthquake in 2010. And I took a bunch of pictures, and I saw with my own eyes what it looks like when a building has fallen down on people, and you see the rebar sticking out of the cement, and you suddenly realize how horrific it is. News pictures don't do it justice. You need to smell the cement and see the rebar and and understand the weight of what really did happen at that place, to really understand the sorrow, the pain, the suffering that people are going through. And so to walk through this experience and see how they recreated it, and how the photographs that I took and the drawings that the Storyland team put together had now culminated into what we could actually walk through and look at. I think it's an amazing, amazing experience, and I hope you felt the same way. It was moving to my very core.
It was definitely a definition of transformational, and it's kind of interesting because it's kind of the exact opposite of the architecture of reassurance that John Lynch talks about. But again, all about moving towards life change, world change, and transformation. So it's just an amazing story that I think, digging into my personal story, I really just always resonated with being born in Saigon, Vietnam, getting out right before the fall of Saigon, having a chance to adopt some kids from around the world and do quite a bit of traveling. My wife, Lori, worked for Convoy of Hope and Feed One, and we led groups together to Haiti and experienced the stuff firsthand. I've been over to Ecuador with Compassion International to see the community and family life-changing work that some of these organizations are allowed to provide. And again, to be able to not have to get a passport and immunization and get on a plane, and to be able to step foot in this outside of a world city like LA is just such a unique opportunity. Yeah.
One of the key phrases when we were working early on about it when we were sitting with some Imagineers, one person joked that it was the anti-Epcot. I mean, Epcot is all about showing the most wonderful parts of a
edited,
culture.
Distilled.
It's beautiful, and it does exactly what it's there for. But on the other side of those facades in the real world is some pain. And so Poverty Encounter is doing its best to tell that story well. So I wanted to ask you this question. You've traveled the world you were born in another country. You've seen poverty firsthand. So what is something, now you talked about your kids, what's something you want your kids to understand about the world that they can't get just living in, Orange County, Los Angeles, California, United States of America?
Well, I guess there's definitely that layer of feeling like the Matrix of wanting to wake them up from that dream that is that bubble that we live in suburban first world America, particularly Southern California. But beyond that, beyond just the be blessed, feel contentment and feel gratification for what we have. I think beyond that, I think the deeper layer for me is the way that you find beauty in ashes. You find joy in the midst of great need. The way that humanity has this unique ability to just find joy and contentment. I mean, again, seeing kids play in the conditions that they play in and be so happy with what they are provided with. I think that lighter side, is something that was something unexpected that I found that really does help increase even more so the level of contentment and peace that I find at home with my family and kids.
Yeah. And it's really, I think about my own kids, that I want them to understand that the world is different than it is inside their own homes. I want them to understand that there's other people going through other things, and that when they understand that, they can respond better to any situation, understanding that it's not all about them, that it is about other people and serving them. And so that is, as you said, the most transformational part about this place. And it's not about settings. It's about stories. Throughout Poverty Encounter, there's fantastic video storytelling, helping you understand the children who do live in these places. And I can't wait for the rest of the world to see it. Well, that's the idea behind Poverty Encounter, Children's Hunger Fund's new walkthrough educational experience. They're going to help students see the world with fresh eyes and maybe, just maybe, live differently because of it. So hold on to your hearts, folks. Here's the interview with the director of Poverty Encounter at Children's Hunger Fund, Alissa Whiteley. So here we are at Poverty Encounter at Children's Hunger Fund. This is preview weekend, and we are so excited to be here as part of it. Can't wait to begin our interview with our guest today, Alissa Whiteley, who's the director of Poverty Encounter.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
This has been a long time coming.
What a journey.
Yeah, really, quite a journry. Mel and I have personally been involved in it along the way, and it's so exciting to be here with you. And today, what we like to cover in the Themed Attraction podcast, we love to cover the disciplines, what it takes to create a themed attraction, like any of the theme parks or themed museums and places like that around the world. We love to talk about what disciplines it takes to make them. So we wanted to talk to you as an educator and a person who runs themed attraction, how the education factor influences the way people experience the attraction.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about where you come from and what led you here to today.
Well, I've been involved in education pretty much my whole career. I worked in the tutoring industry, building up programs for individual students. I created a GED program to work with adults to get their high school diplomas. And then I was at the Reagan Library for 7 years. So I've always worked with teachers, worked with educators, and worked with students mostly to be able to build a lesson or a program that was going to have an impact on them.
Yeah.
I love the Reagan Library. We, out on the left coast here, we don't have nearly as many experiences where you can step into the stories and history as much as folks even the East Coast and especially the Midwest. But what a great! I've told so many people that the only thing that could even compete with some of those great experiences is the Reagan. So how did you even connect with that organization?
To be honest, I went in cold.
No
I
kidding.
didn't know anybody when I applied for
Did
it.
you at least like Reagan? Do you remember?
Oh, I
who this guy
did. I
was?
did. I remember going. I live close by, so I remember going on field trips there.
Okay.
But when I was in school, they didn't have the Air Force One Discovery Center, which
Yeah.
is the program that I ended up being the manager of. So the first time when I went, I actually applied for my boss's job, and they brought me in, and they said, "Actually, we think that you would be better suited for the Discovery Center." It wasn't a posted position at that point. And when they took me through, much like the first time I heard about Poverty Encounter, you see something for the first time and you just are blown away.
Yeah.
And you go, wow, what is this? You're right away immersed in this environment, and it's unlike anything that I had ever seen before when I went there. So what they did for the Discovery Center was they basically made a replica and a model of the Oval Office, military command center, and then a White House press room. And then it ended with a flight home, which was a mini Air Force One.
Nice.
So that program was designed at the time when I started. It was for 5th through 8th grade students, and ultimately we expanded to high school level. But we saw about 25,000 students a school year in that program. So over the course of 7 years, I was able to have 175,000 kids go through that program. So it really taught us a lot and really helped me understand how are you going to craft a program that is going to continuously grow to have an impact on students no matter what level that they come in at.
So powerful, because a lot of times, especially more on the entertainment side, we'll talk about edutainment, we'll talk about moments of inspiration or insight or education, but to talk about lifelong transformation and impact is really powerful. And to get to do that kind of 2 projects in a row here is
Yes.
quite a
Very
batting
blessed.
average for you here.
Very blessed. Thank you. Yes, I think being in those rooms with the students, we would hear things like, I'm going to join the military one day.
Right.
I want to work for the Oval Office. I want to go to Washington, D.C. Kids that said that they came in with a passion for journalism, but leaving the press room where they actually got to be a reporter.
Yeah.
They got to be behind the camera. They got to be in front of the camera. So all of that is just playing into the depth at which they are going to connect with the mission of what your program is. And our mission was to develop the next generation of student leaders.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, that's fantastic. For those who haven't been through it, give us a little bit more detail about those replica rooms that people go to. I mean, I've been through it, and you really feel like you're part of history in there.
you are, and the students are in a role that they never could imagine themselves being in. What 5th grader thinks that they're going to be President Reagan for the day, making decisions when the clock is ticking, and they have to make a decision related to the Operation Urgent Fury. That was really the scenario that was developed. So we developed, to speak to the educational component, developing lessons ahead of time. So pre-curriculum was really important because you can't just pluck students out of their day-to-day classroom, put them in the Oval Office and think they're going to understand what a cabinet does,
Right.
what members of the cabinet do,
Yeah.
or putting them in the military room and having them make decisions which, quote unquote, have to deal with people's lives. Lives are at stake when it's involved with military decisions, and yet they don't know what the branches of our military do. And so even though the program itself, they would be on site, they had the tour of the museum, they had the Discovery Center situation itself, we had a classroom lesson. It was a 4-hour program. But that still, it wasn't going to get them to the level of understanding that we wanted them to walk away with if we didn't do some front loading of information ahead of time.
Yeah.
So that really helped be able to get them to understand more about what they were doing when we added education ahead of time and worked with teachers to develop curriculum to do that.
That's great. And the storyline of that experience culminates in the press room where the decisions that have been made actually change. So from, modern theme parks are trying to put their finger on that special sauce of creating situations where the actions that the guests take has an impact on the way the story is going to go. I mean, I think about places like Knott's, their Ghost Town Alive, and then the way Star Wars Land is supposed to come out, where as soon as you check into your hotel room, you are a character, and that flows through your entire experience there. So how how did you deal with that as an educator, to deal with a historical situation that has to play out historically, and yet things would change along the way?
That's a really great question, because ultimately the decisions that the students would make, it didn't matter to us that they were historically accurate decisions, because so much of the lesson could be done in their critical thinking and how they are going to arrive at a decision. And some of those decisions were in line with history, and sometimes they were not. But the point of it was afterwards that we could debate and deliberate about it.
Yeah.
And they could, we can say things like, we can't go back and change history, but we can absolutely learn from it. So what would President Reagan have done? Here's what he did do, but what if he would have gone the other way?
Yeah.
And so those were the lessons and the takeaways that we wanted the students to have. That being said, we wanted to make sure that they left with an accurate historical knowledge of what really happened with Operation Urgent Fury. And so the wrap-up in the press room really spoke to that context.
Wow. Well, I'm sitting here in a kind of just an amazing situation. I just had a chance to walk through the experience after years of dreaming about it. And again, the whole journey from, well, we use the term blue sky to building a lot. And to be sitting in front of both of you guys, with Freddy on the one hand, there with the founder and President Dave Phillips, and to be in that blue sky session with you so many years ago when you reached out to whoever you could at WVI and Imagineering, and then to now experience kind of the baton pass, I guess, to Alissa here to actually have to kind of rein this thing into a sustainable, ongoing thing. Freddie, you mind just giving a quick kind of, the initial, seed of the idea?
Yeah, I remember Dave looking at pictures of his sons after taking them to different places. There's one picture that I remember seeing Justin Phillips. He's just a little kid. Now he's a big guy and he works at Children's Hunger Fund, does all kinds of stuff. But he was this little kid with a food pack on his shoulder in an alleyway in what I believe was a garbage dump in Nicaragua. It might have been Nicaragua. Anyway, nevertheless, Dave came home saying, my kid is so impacted by this. I want other kids to be impacted by this. How can we start? How can we tell that story so other kids can be impacted by that? And he asked me to figure this out. And it's so strange. It's like, how can we figure this out? So we started making drawings, started taking photos, and putting them together, sort of trying to composite, well, what is this place like? And each time I traveled with Children's Hunger Fund to a different place, I would take pictures, and it's so strange to walk through the experience now and see some of the exact same pictures that I took now built into themed design. That's an incredible
some
opportunity.
Of your global benchmarking, was it Shanghai or Milan's World Expo where you're kind of benchmarking some of
you're going into I went to Milan's World Expo, and you're looking and you'd go in and see what these,
which the whole theme was food and feeding the planet.
Yeah, that's right. And now seeing how those programs actually are working or not working in particular places. So, I mean, we're seeing true stories being told here, and that's what you did at the Reagan. And now, today, you've developed the educational component and lead what Children's Hunger Fund is doing with Poverty Encounter. So tell us a little bit about how you're telling the true story and impacting kids, just like Dave Phillips' son was impacted. How are you hoping to tell that story?
First of all, I'm not telling the stories. The stories were already in existence. Children's Hunger Fund being around since 1991, you could imagine the volume of stories of lives that have been impacted by the ministry and serving in all of these countries. So the stories already existed. And like Mel mentioned with the Blue Sky sessions and our team that have been doing this for so long and dreaming about a way for the funding to come in and praying over every little aspect and saying, okay, what if this is going to be a reality one day? So really that reality for me came when I started a year ago and had all of the transcripts that had been, our communications team had sat down with our ministry development team to be able to say, what are the hopes and dreams of these children living in poverty? What are their life likes? What is their life like? What are the unique challenges to them based on all of the areas that we're serving? So really, I think I distinctly remember a time when I had been here for maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and getting those transcripts and looking at them and being in my education mindset and thinking, okay, I can get through this one by noon. I'll finish this one by tomorrow. I'm going to take a first pass and then I'll do some notes. And I just, I opened them up and started reading the first one and couldn't even get through the first page.
I remember you telling me that.
I was just bawling, sitting at my desk all by myself going, how is this going to be achieved? These are heartbreaking stories. I know we want to bring visitors in and young children. It's the point of impacting the next generation, but these are so the stories of the suffering.
I just personally experienced something as we were waiting to go in. There was a couple of ladies that kind of were rushing to get out. Basically, they were volunteers that had volunteered here every week for, I'm not sure how long, but they were pretty regular. But they got about halfway through and they were just so overwhelmed emotionally by the reality of what this all meant and what they had been doing all along, and kind of getting that moment for the first time.
And I think that's the thing, when everyone is going to come in at a completely different place of their own personal experience with poverty. And so, we've seen it already, even before the finished product. Pastors come in visiting from Honduras, for example, and they just, in that first room already, they're brought to tears, saying, these are the homes of the families that we serve. I mean, it's this so realistic that it just goes deep within their heart, and it's exactly what they do on a daily basis. Versus, and so you couple that with children coming in who haven't ever experienced anything other than California or even Disneyland, if we want to talk about vacations.
Needing to share their Xbox with their sibling.
Exactly. So you take those two different types of users, and you know that you're trying to build a user journey that is going to impact both of those cases. So really being able to, again, kind of going back to those transcripts and really just realizing that I need to slow down, I need to pray about it before I even open up any of these documents, and I just need to see where we're going to go from here. And I think in the beginning, that's where I started to realize that we needed to build more than one program, that we needed to take a layered approach to the way in which we were going to share with guests the complexities of poverty and the depth of our ministry. So we actually have been, our teams have been working for the past year, our video team and our communications team and the poverty encounter team, to really show how are we going to do a first phase, which we've ultimately come to call the cycle of poverty phase, and a second phase, which is the cycle of hope phase, so that guests can come back and have a different experience the second time, going even deeper into poverty, deeper into scripture, deeper into the stories of the children that we're sharing, with ultimately a goal of actually having a third phase as well.
Well, I was always blown away by just even the promise of not just, again, exposing, educating, the idea of transforming people to the four corners of the world and understand the four major causes of poverty, but leaving them with the ability to actually do something to change the world, and to actually walk into the room where you have this massive warehouse and they actually have the ability to package food up and do something. But tell me more. I mean, the idea of going even beyond that takes it to a whole other level.
Yeah, we don't know what the outcome's going to be. That's just what we're praying for, that God finds a way that for each individual coming through here, that they will realize that there is a way that they can help. And so we make it very tangible for the very first visit, that they can actually go directly into the food pack room and start bagging beans and weighing macaroni and sealing the bags that we have of food, knowing that the next place that food is going to go is to a family directly in need. So they feel right away that they are part of the solution. Beyond that, that's up to God. But we know that they're going to have a response, and that's really our prayer.
Sorry, folks. We'll be back with the rest of our interview in just a moment. But first, these words. Did you know that 1 in every 3 websites is built on WordPress? WordPress sites are super versatile. In fact, if your website is not on WordPress, you're losing out. You need the WordPress experts at My Studio Space LLC to help you out. Their friendly staff can build your new website, give your old site a facelift, or they can help you make those stubborn little changes that you simply don't have time for. My Studio Space will help you claim your domain, your custom email, and set up your entire site. Visit them on the web at mystudiospace.com or call 407-701-7577 to get started. And here's an outrageous special offer for you, our podcast listeners. Switch your hosting from GoDaddy to My Studio Space, and they'll pay you $100 cash. Just mention Themed Attraction when you call to redeem your offer. That's mystudiospace.com. I remember that being part of conversations when we would talk about, like, what's the answer? What do you want to do at the end? What's the goal? And I remember talking to Dave, and I thought, well, naturally, it's a fundraising organization. You want to raise money. Well, the natural thing is to, make a donation to Children's Hunger Fund. But what he surprised me with was, well, I don't know. I know that one kid might go become a missionary out in some place and open an orphanage. One kid might start a barbershop in his town so that he can help homeless people. I mean, and that was a surprising action, is that it's not about getting donations. It was about changing hearts. Mm-hmm.
And they will.
Yeah.
They will. Those kids will go out and they will do that. They are absolutely, when you think about the younger generation, high school students and college students, they have the world ahead of them, and they want to change the world. They want to change it for the better. And so being able to put this experience on their heart and really empower them to see what they can do from there is really something that's very exciting for us. We can't wait to see what they're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, one thing I wanted to share without kind of spilling the beans too much and revealing the entire
Don't give away
experience.
Secrets.
I did think from a concept development, concept design, blue sky perspective, just to give people a little taste test of the experience. Some of the original blue sky ideas of how we would actually get people into the story. The original thought was, because you guys have had an existing program of having thousands of students and kids and families coming through for years that had come to the facility to volunteer. But we thought, it'd be kind of fun to kind of minimize their expectations on the front end originally, and just walk into a boring kind of safety training video, cheesy, fluorescent, dimly lit room that they think, okay, before you're, going into a warehouse, here's your basic safety training video. And then to surprise them a little bit with a simulated, earthquake, and have the walls come down. And this was not too many years after the Haiti earthquake. So the idea that you'd be standing in the aftermath of the Haiti earthquake. But Freddie, I thought it'd be interesting for you to share kind of the functional throughput, as well as creative reasons for needing to kung fu pivot on that original direction. Yeah. So as we were talking about how one of the issues was we knew that this was a small area of space. You might recall this. I'm telling you this as though you don't know. There's small numbers of people who could come through. And I remember you and I, we sat down. I was like, how many kids can you get through? And then how many chaperones do you need with them? And we were really struggling with this. I think a lot of people just don't understand how much industrial engineering and throughput, kind of comes into these types.
And that's why I'm so glad you're in charge of it, because it's like that was so exciting to hear that story early on. And you impressed upon Children's Hunger Fund that, hey, your kids need longer time in each of these spaces. So that forced us to, instead of designing a one room where everybody goes through all at once, into splitting people up. Mm-hmm. And so now you had to get them to a hub.
From kind of a linear loop to kind of a hub and spoke.
Yeah, to a hub and spoke, which is a fantastic thing. I don't want to give it away, so I'm not going to. People have to come and see how you get to the hub, but it's a fantastic, beautiful trick. And so now, would you speak to the idea of bringing people transporting them into these areas, and what's the importance of taking them nearly physically to these places?
Yeah, I think that's another part of the program design that when I sat down with our ministry development team, I really had them map out for me what they're the ones with the experience. They have been there. I had not. So when you are in a dump, let's look at all of the senses. What do you want our guests to see? Because what do you see when you're there? What do you want them to feel with their heart? What do you want them to smell? Yeah. What do you want them to say? What do you want them to think? So all of these different ways, what do you want them to hear? So in having them be able to do that for an adult visitor and a child visitor, for the dump, for the disaster, for the brickyard, for each of the rooms, it really allowed us to be able to go, okay, well, they need to hear the sound of trucks roaring. They need to hear the sound of children laughing, because kids are kids. And even though they're living in a dump, they're going to be playing. So all of those allowed us to be able to say, okay, well, that could be accomplished through sound design. And what they see, okay, these are what we need to focus on for our video team, for when they go and they capture the real footage. So being able to look at all the different senses and put that all together is really how you're going to immerse them in an environment. And just in the experience of being at a place like the Reagan Library with all of the visitors that we get, flow is huge. Flow, traffic and flow and number of guests. And so being able to have that experience to speak into this was incredibly helpful as well. Timing, how long, how are you going to take them through an experience that's going to just continuously get deeper and more involved and more shocking, but then also realizing that you can't just depress people.
Right.
You can't take them on this really long journey where they're feeling saddened and their heart is heavy, and it just continues and goes on and on and on, because people are just going to check out.
Yeah.
Emotionally, they're going to check out, and then you're not achieving anything at that point. So really, our team was very intentional about the way that how are we going to weave hope throughout, and little nuggets in the beginning, but then that it would build and build and build upon.
Yeah.
And the final room, I love that the final room is the hope room.
Yeah.
And that's really what it's all about.
You guys leading straight to hope.
You mentioned some of the tools of the trade in the toolbox, I guess, in terms of designing for all the senses. But it really struck me, being in, for example, the sewers, and feeling the temperature difference, the humidity combined with the sounds, and wow, just what an impact.
Yeah. Now, before we let you go, we should wrap up. But before we let you go, I want you to tell us how we saw some of the videos, and we saw some of the children in these videos, and it wasn't enough to hire actors for you. You were going to film in a real garbage dump in Guatemala, where people really do live. Can you tell me a little bit about what it was to tell the story of real kids, using those real kids as part of the story?
Yeah, so that was crucial. I just think that that was a mission critical element that we needed to portray real families and real children. That being said, when I came to understand and have a deeper appreciation, which I didn't know in the beginning, of how our mercy networks serving in those countries, how those families are really protected as well. We didn't ever want to make it seem like we were exploiting them for our own benefit or our own use. Yeah. So all of the children that are portrayed in each of the rooms are real children living in those situations, as you mentioned, living in a dump. But the stories that they are telling are from our Mercy Network. So we kind of coupled those together to be able to authentically portray the lives of the children living in those situations. Wow.
Really appreciate the sensitivity, in terms of approaching it and handling it, giving it authenticity without, actually using the kids.
It didn't come without its challenges, because the relational aspect of Children's Hunger Fund with the churches and the pastors that we serve, it would make for a natural, you would think, a way in to have there we go, this is a family. They're real, that's who we're serving, and they can tell the actual story, but that not using our own families and finding other ones definitely posed its challenges, because then our video team to go in and to scout the location, for example, they did that cold as soon as they landed. They had a day or two to find the perfect brickyard that was going to be featured in the brickyard here. So
Well, I hope the listeners get just a sense of the care, the intentionality, even in just making a decision like that, of managing that tension between authenticity, immersive realism, but really just having, I think, a really great God's heart, you know, sharing God's heart for these communities.
And there's a responsibility that you have in telling this story, not to harm, but to really honestly help. And I think that comes across. It's really quite beautiful. Well, thank you, Alissa. This is huge for us, especially having seen some of it for so long, and then to hear your heart and to know that your energies are towards helping today's young people understand their world, and then truly make an impact in it and change the world. I mean, this is a world-changing themed attraction. I mean, it's amazing. I can't wait for people to see it.
I can't think of a better example. I mean, I use the term that story forms who we are, but then story has potential to transform who we become. And this is probably just one of the best examples in my career that I've had a chance to do that.
Well,
so I'm so humbled to join you on the
it's
journey.
a huge blessing and honor to be here talking to you guys today. And thank you for sharing Poverty Encounter. I just hope more people come and they get to see it when we open in December.
Believe me, they will. They
you.
will. Thank you. Wow, Alissa is such a passionate person about helping students understand the world around them. She, you can tell just by listening to her voice and the way that she says things, that this is a life mission to help students be transformed through the things that they can learn, and especially here at Poverty Encounter. It's an amazing opportunity to do so much with just a little bit of space. And now that you've been through it, Mel, what do you think?
You know, gosh, I can't even put into words. It is striking to me the way that the right people come together with the different skill sets and talents, you know, from, Dave and his unique personal heartfelt vision and steadfastness kind of, in just pushing this through and casting the vision and getting the fund raised, you coming along and being such a part of that creative heavy lifting and making that happen. And then again, for her to join the team, to have someone with Alissa's background and passion for again taking the reins of this amazing toy or this car, taking the keys, but then really being able to make that bridge into changing minds and hearts of particularly again next generations kids. What a beautiful picture of kind of the motley crew of humanity that it takes to change the world. But again, just coming out of that, and again, as I was walking in, experiencing people that were just so overtaken by emotion, leaving, endeavoring to come back to round it out. But these are people that have been plugged into the mission of the organization. They've been serving. They've been filling food bags for a number of at least months, if not years. But they said this was the first time it really hit home for them, the why behind what they were doing. Yeah,
it was really something very special for me. I know it was special for you, and it's going to be special for everybody who comes through Poverty Encounter from now on. I just want to thank the folks at Children's Hunger Fund. This is an amazing thing for them to have accomplished, and most especially, I want to thank Dave, president of Children's Hunger Fund, for his faith in this project, making it come through to where it is. I mean, he was really the Walt Disney of the project. His friendship to me is just invaluable. And so, and really, amazingly, this is my first theme park, themed entertainment project that I've ever worked on. And so it's super personal and very special. And I can't thank him enough for giving me the opportunity to serve alongside him in that whole process. Just super, can't say it enough. So anyway, Poverty Encounter opens December 8th in 2018. If you're listening to this before that, hey, come to the premiere, the opening. But if you whenever you listen, I want you to get tickets. You need to go to get tickets. So go to povertyencounter.org right now to get tickets. I'm anticipating, knowing Children's Hunger Fund the way I do, this is going to sell out to July before you even know it. I mean, get to their site, get your tickets, and come see Poverty Encounter when it opens December 8th. Well, we've just passed under the falls, Mel, so we're just a few clicks from home. Better head back to the dock. Until next time, thanks, folks. The Themed Attraction Podcast is hosted by Freddie Martin and Mel McGowan. Take a minute to leave us a review on iTunes Podcasts and share the show with your friends. Our guest was the director of Poverty Encounter, Alissa Whiteley. Follow her work at Poverty Encounter on Instagram, at CHF Poverty on Twitter, or find them on Facebook. Then schedule your life-changing visit at povertyencounter.org. Get access to more stories and interviews at themedattraction.com, the world's most comprehensive site on theme park and themed attraction design. Connect with Mel by email via mel@storylandstudios.com or follow him on Twitter at Mel McGowan and Instagram at Visioneer. You can find me at freddymartin.net and follow my adventures at Skipper Freddy on Instagram and Twitter. Our theme music was composed by Rob Watson. Other music provided by The Lost Dogs. This episode was designed and produced by the one and only Dr. Barry Hill. Find him at barryrhill.com. You know, Mel, Barry's a great singer. He once asked if he could sing a solo here on the show. I said, sure. So low, we can't hear you. Thanks for listening, folks.